Hello and welcome to another episode of the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be reviewing a tweet from Alexander Dugan on Twitter. And Alexander Dugan is a major political theorist within Russia. He doesn't have particularly much influence over the Russian government, but I do feel like his ideas, his political beliefs are pretty prophetic. And so we're going to go over that and see what I think of it, and I'd like to hear your take in the comments section about what you think of Alexander Dugan's perspective on things. The escalation of Israel's war with Palestine will undoubtedly consolidate the Islamic world. Okay, so we've already seen some consolidation with Shia Iran and Sunni Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates joining BRICS. So this war is going to help consolidate them. Conservatives in the West are again talking about defending the judeo-Christian civilization in the face of Muslims. And I think he's going to, I don't know if he's going to disagree with it in this tweet or another one of the tweets that I'm going to be providing commentary on, but the notion of judeo-Christian civilization just does not make any sense. The Christian values are completely decoupled from the Pharisees' rabbinical type of traditional values. Obviously, I mean, if you've read the Bible, that is entirely what Jesus Christ was talking about. He was talking about how the Jewish values at the time were against what he perceived to be God's values and what future Christians' values should be. Obviously, Christianity didn't exist at that point in time. He just had a few disciples. But it's very clear that the notion of Judeo-Christian values, it's like saying water and fire values. Like they're as different as potentially possible. Because again, modern contemporary Jewish values are based off of the rabbinical tradition. And the rabbinical tradition is based off of the Pharisees, and the Pharisees were in opposition to Jesus Christ, and so you just can't have Judeo-Christian values because they were in conflict for the past few millennia. And so he goes on to say the radical ideology of Hamas provides them with a convenient excuse for this. However, a society of deep atheism, materialism, and legalization of all kinds of perversions, which has long since abandoned traditional theology and values and orientations, cannot be considered either Christian or Jewish. Okay, so he's arguing that the modern civilization is neither of them. So I was arguing that they're in opposition, so it couldn't be both of them, but he's arguing it's actually neither of them. I talked about in another video where the modern West is made up of Zionism and progressivism, with Zionism being dominant. But you can see here that he's arguing that progressivism is dominant and it's in opposition to Judaism. If the West, as it is now, supports Israel, it is seriously guilty of something. After all, if the devil's civilization is on your side, then you have done something wrong. There's no such thing as Judeo-Christian world. It just doesn't make sense. The Islamic world, on the contrary, exists and in its traditions, and in it, the traditions are still strong. It turns out that it is not Judeo-Christians against Muslims. I should mention here, I guess, that the Islamic world is strong, but things like the internet have been it's turned people towards atheism, it's turned people towards materialism, it's turned people towards hedonism. So the culture war that the West is waging on the Islamic world has been pretty successful, just the same as it's been successful in other parts of the world. That is why these various other civilization states are rising up against the West. It's because their culture is very persuasive. I don't think it's particularly good, but it is very persuasive. And that's the thing people need to decouple, where you could tempt people, you could persuade people of things. That doesn't mean it's right. And I think oftentimes people think that, well, if it's persuasive, then it has to be correct, and that's not necessarily the case. And so the West is persuading people, it's tempting people towards the hedonistic, materialistic, progressive culture of the West, but that does not mean that progressive culture is correct. Okay, so traditions are strong. It turns out that it is not Judeo-Christians against Muslims, but the Muslims against the satanic culture, against Dajjal. Biden's idea of combining the theme of support for Ukraine with support for Israel only underlines this. So I talked about this in other videos, but there's a clear dividing line now between the people who support Russia and support Palestine versus the people who support Ukraine and support Israel. There's a little bit of overlap where people who are Russian Jews or former Russian Jews who went to Israel sometimes support Russia. But for the most part, there's a clear dividing line. And so not only did the major Islamic powers join BRICS, but they also are becoming more and more heavily in favor of other aspects of the multipolar world, such as Russia's current situation in Ukraine, their current operations in Ukraine. So the Ukraine with support for Israel only underlines this. The West is always on the side of those who submit to its hegemony and serve it. Obviously, that's the case. I mean, I talked about this in other videos as well, where you can't be in support of Kosovo and of Crimea at the same time. Because Kosovo is, or you can't be in support of Kosovo and opposed to Crimea joining Russia at the same time, is how I should put it. Because Kosovo has a majority non-Serbian population, because the people of Kosovo, the Islamic people of Kosovo, just had a higher fertility rate than the Serbians. And so they gained independence by voting. Crimea, which has since for hundreds of years at this point been majority ethnically Russian, and they voted, and there's been a ton of research showing that they voted, it wasn't a rigged vote, it wasn't a corrupt vote in any way, shape, or form. They voted to join with the people who are ethnically similar to them, the Russians. They are Russian speaking and they are Russian ethnicity. And so if you support Crimea staying in Ukraine and you support Kosovo's independence from Serbia, then you are telling the world that you don't have any core beliefs aside from to do what American hegemony tells you, because you can't hold those in mind at the same time. If you support Kosovo's independence, you have to support Crimea joining Russia. It's just, you have to. Unless you are completely subservient, unless your mind is completely propagandized by the West. Okay. Muslims were not enemies of Ukraine and allies of Russia, with the exception of eschatologically awakened Iran and Syria. So Iran, a decade ago, really did want to balance between Russia, China, and the West, but they've come to realize that you just can't join. You can't really work with the West because they don't keep to any agreements. And so they are very solidly on the side of Russia and China at this point. Okay, so but the Islamic world is now on the side of Russia and against Ukraine. Obviously, Russia is the pole of a multipolar world. Islam is the pole of a multipolar world. Both poles oppose the West's desperate attempts to save unipolarism and its global dominance at any cost. Even at the cost of a world war, the Palestinian conflict with Israel was not the front line of a conflict of civilizations. Now it is. That's the interesting thing about this, where I do remember, I'm old enough to remember some prior Palestine-Israel conflicts, and right now it feels different because there's a rising bloc that is opposed to the West. And you can clearly see that the people who believe in that rising bloc also support Palestine. And I don't think there was that much support outside of the Muslim world for Palestine before. And now you're seeing a lot of people who, they've been talking on Twitter about the Ukrainian situation, they've been supporting Russia, and now they're supporting Palestine as well. And so that type of thing, it used to be that people kind of just stayed in their own lane, where like if this had all happened a decade ago, like the people who supported Russia would just like stay away from the Palestine-Israel conflict. It wouldn't be like a part of their, it wouldn't be something that they took personally. It wouldn't be something that they really thought about or gave any time to. But now they realize that they're all a part of the same faction, the same bloc. And so the people who support Russia also support Palestine now. And that's so interesting to see. And you see the leaders of this new multipolar world bloc, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, coming out and saying, like, we need a two-state solution. We need Palestine with the 1967 borders. And that's just shocking. It's really shocking to see that Palestine has had conflicts with Israel in the past, but has not garnered this level of support before. And it's just shocking to see these dividing lines, not only for the Ukraine conflict, but also the Palestine conflict, because it's just showing that the world is split, massively split. Okay, so Russia is the pole of multipolar world. Islam is the pole of multipolar world. Both poles oppose the West's desperate attempts to save unipolarism and its global dominance. Okay. So they're just saying that these different poles are all aligning in order to fight the West. Just as the tensions between Russia and Ukraine were regional in character until the Nazis in Kyiv were supported by the West, the war in Ukraine has become the front line of a global confrontation between multipolarity and unipolarity. The scope of this confrontation is growing. This situation is becoming more and more sinister. Already billions of people on the planet are convinced that the collective West and its allies are absolutely evil and the civilization of the Antichrist. I do actually believe that right now. The level of materialism, the level of hedonism, it's just horrific to see in the West. And so, yeah, this is, and they're also trying to rebuild the third temple, which would really cause a world war between the Muslim world and the, if you want to call it judeo-Christian world, I guess you can, the West. But yeah, that's the situation we're currently in. And some of the early smaller conflicts of what I would likely conclude is going to be World War III are already starting to occur. And so I'm just glad that, yes, I'm in the Philippines, which could be a battleground between China and the United States eventually, but I'm in the southern parts of Philippines. So my specific location is not going to be a battleground. I feel very bad for the other people who are not in the same situation as me, but I made sure to get out whenever I noticed that things were starting to get very bad. And so other people are noticing as well. That's why the amount of people getting passports is going up in America. But yeah, if you are watching this video, I would strongly recommend moving out of the Western world and out of potential conflict zones, because things are going to be very interesting over the next decade and probably over the next few years, really. I really think things are going to start heating up probably before 2028, because that's when China is predicted to be stronger than America in most ways. I think they're already stronger in a lot of ways that matter, but there are some various metrics that people are looking at to say 2028 is kind of the turning point there. And so I think things are going to probably heat up a lot before then. Okay. We see Democrats, globalists, and neoconservatives are leading humanity straight into the abyss, which strictly speaking is what demons are supposed to do. Okay, and then you have the same tweet in other languages. So really interesting stuff here. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give us a thumbs up if you did. If you want to hear more content from me, I'm constantly trying to do different types of content. Reaction content to these tweets is kind of a new one for me. I like doing that though. So please let me know if you have any questions, comments, critiques in the comment box below. And thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.